There's a thing in mountain climbing called false peak. Basically, whenever you are approaching a ridge and in your mind you think it's the summit, only to get there and realize that the summit is still so far out into the distance. You can see all the miles that you even put behind you, but for some reason that summit doesn't seem to be getting any closer. And I feel like living and working through grief is a lot like the false summit, because we do our best to keep going, carrying on every day, and we think that, we're getting better. We think that we're starting to be able to let some things go and maybe become somewhat okay in the absence of whatever it is that we are grieving, only to realize it was just a false peak, and that summit of the mountain of grief we are trying to climb is still so far out in the distance, it might as well be untouchable. I was outside earlier and started really noticing how the leaves are changing here in western North Carolina. The temperature's dropping. It's finally starting to feel like fall turning into winter. And I say finally because here in North Carolina, one day you have 100-degree hell heat, and then the next day, there's frost on the ground. But it's this time of year that also really gets me thinking about the people who aren't here. Grief and loss has been something that's pretty much been a constant in my life for as long as I can really remember. Growing up with cystic fibrosis and, being in the hospital, you see a lot of stuff as a kid that kind of shapes you, and things stick to you that a lot of people don't really think about. They think that just because someone's super young, growing up in a hospital, they're not really absorbing and really understanding the gravity of what's happening around you. But I was fully cognizant and conscious and aware of all of it. I remember as a kid hearing the code blues come over the intercom, and nurses and doctors and staff rushing into a room, and the next day you go to the cafeteria. I'm walking with my mom to take a walk around the halls, and that room that they all ran to was empty now. As I got older, I got really into the cystic fibrosis community. I worked with a nonprofit, and we did a lot of events for cystic fibrosis patients, 5Ks, all that stuff. And I've met so many people with CF, patients, parents, people who have a loved one with CF, people who have lost a loved one with CF. You create these really close bonds and friendships. The worst thing about all of that, pre-Trikafta especially, anytime I would meet someone with cystic fibrosis, in my mind, I already had lost them. I had already prepared myself to lose them. At the 5K, we would all gather for like group photos on the beach, and we would always take a photo of everyone who had CF while they were at the 5K. Those photos are kind of like this double-edged sword, because you look back on all these amazing people you met and the wonderful experiences and just how great the day was. But I could go through those photos now, and probably more than half of those people aren't here anymore. It always kind of leaves you with a question of why. Why do I deserve to be here? Why am I still around? Why did this person who has the same condition as me, we take the same medication, we're almost the exact same BMI and everything, why did this person get taken, and why am I still here? 6 years ago, I lost my best friend Aaron to cystic fibrosis. It happened very, very suddenly. She had a double lung transplant. This was long before Trikafta and all of the breakthroughs now, and she was just one of the most pure humans that I've ever met in my life. And we always used to say, like, man, Aaron's gonna outlive everybody, because we used to go hiking out in Colorado to do the 14ers, and she would be like a gazelle going up this mountain, and you have me, who, this was before Trikafta, so my lungs are like in the 70% range, and I'm still, I'm trucking, I'm doing my best to get up the hills, but she would just be sprinting, leaving everybody in the dust, leaving people who didn't have CF and hadn't had a lung transplant. They're gasping for air, and she's just like, man, let's go. And there wasn't really a lot that she couldn't do, and a lot that you were going to tell her that she couldn't do. And we met at one of the 5Ks. We just became inseparable. We were always together. We were always working on stuff for the foundation. And she was always the person that I called after every doctor's appointment. Before I called anyone, I would send her a text. And if my lungs were good, she would be so stoked and just hyping me up. And she was like that to the whole community as well. She cared so much about everyone that she met who had CF, and she wanted everyone to just be okay. And how she can't wait for the day to where a cure comes out and everyone's good and we don't have to lose anyone anymore. Late June, early July of 2015, she sent me a text message and said, hey, my oxygen's a little low and I'm feeling a little cruddy, so I'm gonna go to the ER and get myself checked out. But we didn't think anything of it. We texted all through that night. She was on the CF floor that I'm usually on. She had the same nurses that I've had, so it just all seemed normal. But within the span of a day or two, it all changed, and I got another text from her. And it basically said, hey, things aren't looking good. They're going to have to put me under and put me on a ventilator so my lungs could rest. I'm in rejection. She was facing it just head on, just brave as can be. And that's just what Erin did. And she ended the text with, I love all of you so much, and I'll see you soon. Sorry. They life flighted her back to Mayo Clinic to try to do everything they could to save her, but her lungs were too far gone by that point. Near the end of July, they ended up taking her off of life support and everything, and just like that, Erin was gone. Before Erin passed, I had lost more people with CF than I could count. I don't know, once you lose so many people, you kind of become a little numb and emotionless to it. But when Erin passed, that was the worst. She was my rock. And then within just a couple weeks, within a matter of no time, she was gone. There was no really any goodbyes. There was no me telling her how much she meant to me, anything like that. It was just, she was there and then she wasn't there. After she passed, the dam just caved with all of the people I had met and everyone that I had lost to this disease. Things that I had kind of maybe shoved in a corner somewhere to deal with another day. All of that stuff just came dumping out at one time. And I brought up the mountain climbing thing at the beginning of this video because after Erin passed away, I got in some of her ashes, and me and people who were close to Erin, we went out to Colorado to scatter her ashes up on the mountains that she loved so much. The forecast said that it was supposed to be a little bit of snow on the mountain that we were going to climb. Turned out to be a lot of snow. We were trudging through this snow, and it was getting later and later. And if you've ever climbed, you start early so you can get off the mountain as quick as possible, because if a storm rolls in and you're 13, 14K up, that's never a good thing. Because our pace was so slow, we looked up and we saw the summit, and it was just completely covered in clouds. There was a storm there, so we knew that it wasn't going to be possible to summit. So we found this ridge that overlooked, the valley, and it had the summit in the back, and that's where we released Erin's ashes. But even from that experience, I was just like, man, I didn't do enough. I wasn't able to, lay her to rest like I wanted to. I feel all of that is exactly how grief works, and kind of how I was saying earlier about the false peak with trying to get over Erin's death and the death of so many friends, and just from the things that I've seen growing up in hospitals. I always have just wanted it to go away. I want to just get over it. What I've kind of learned over the course of my life is grief is a mountain that cannot be summited. And I have tried through various means, antidepressants, therapy, psychedelics, anything you can think of, to just, get okay with her being gone and just be okay with the circumstances. But I feel like my focus and how I was trying to get there was wrong all this time, because there is nothing in this world, absolutely nothing, that will ever make me forget Erin. There's nothing in this world that will ever make her being gone okay. But going back to that day, even though we didn't make the summit, it was still part of my healing. When trying to deal with grief and trying to hit the summit of grief, if you will, we forget to look back on our accomplishments and just how much we've grown and how many lessons that the people that we've lost have taught us and how we've implemented them into our lives. Once I kind of came to the realization that that summit was never going to be hit, I started looking at the loss in a different light. I've made a couple videos before talking about how we have to live life for other people, to carry on their memory. And that's still true to a point. What I got trapped in was I was living for all of the people who were no longer here. It was almost like I used them as a crutch in a way, because I didn't want that sadness to leave. I wanted to summit that mountain, but I was terrified of the sadness of them being gone, leaving me, because in my mind, that was, I didn't care anymore. I had let them go and they were no longer a part of me. And it was like carrying around that sadness, or carrying around ashes in a necklace or some sort of trinket or item that belonged to these people. It was like a sacrament. I had stopped the progress of healing and working through it, and all I was really doing was just living in this shadow of grief, because I wasn't really there. I was relying on antidepressants and anything that I could to keep myself numb, just so I didn't have to feel it. I'd gotten to a point where I was like, man, I'm never gonna be over this, so I just wanted to be numb all the time. And you can't direct your numbness to one thing. So I was also numb and cold towards Steph as well. And that's really what got me thinking. I was like, man, if I don't want to lose her, and I don't want to just ruin these relationships that I have with people in my life, I've got to figure out a new way to do this. It's funny. I always thought that if I lost that feeling of sadness, that was the disservice to their memory, because I was forgetting them. I was just being like, oh well, my best friend is gone, it's whatever. But I've kind of learned that's not the case. That sorrow and that grief that we have inside, it's always going to be there. Grief, that feeling of grief and that pain that we have in us, I've almost started looking at it now as a positive. And that may sound a little weird, but that pain is there because they were there. But that pain is there as a way to remind us that we loved someone who was absolutely amazing, and nothing can ever take that away. Just because their physical bodies aren't here anymore doesn't mean that the love and everything that we shared with that person is ever going to fade. There was a quote I read online. I think it might have been on Tumblr. I'm not entirely for sure, so don't hold me on that. I'm going to paraphrase it from what I can remember, but the gist of it was, we are mosaics of everyone we've ever loved, even for a moment. And I read that and really started thinking about it. And so many things that I do in my life now, so many decisions I make, so many little habits that I have are from these people. So many memories that I have or things that I'm into come from these people that are no longer with us anymore. So, we look at that pain and, we try to numb it with whatever we can: drugs, alcohol, antidepressants, whatever that we can possibly do to just become numb to it, because we're looking at it as such a bad thing. But if someone gave me the choice of, okay, we can go back in time and you can just never meet Aaron or any of your other friends who you've lost to cystic fibrosis. You wouldn't have their memory. That'd be just, you would never cross paths, and then you wouldn't carry this pain anymore. Will you trade it? And I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. Those people, no matter how brief our time together was, they taught me so much about myself. They taught me so much about life and just who I am as a person and who I wanted to be, that there is no amount of money or anything in this world that would ever make me want to do away with those memories or just have not met them and then be okay. Whenever you're on that path of grief and loss, it's hard, and sometimes you just want it to go away and you want it to be over, but we have to stop and we have to look around. Everything that's around us was touched by the people that we are trying to summit this grief mountain for. When you lose someone, those people have touched so much in your life that now, looking back on it, it's almost crazy to think that they would ever be gone. I've been mourning people that are physically not here, but spiritually, they're always around me. They're always here to lift me up and protect me just from their presence and everything that they touched and blessed, and everything that, every memory that takes me back to the time with them. That is what is most important. We cannot mourn the dead until our own graves. I don't want to make this seem like it's ever going to really get easy. There's still plenty of days that I cry thinking of them. I'll listen to a song, it'll make me cry or bring up emotions for it, but that's okay, because anytime we feel something, no matter what it is, that comes from these people, that's just showing that how much we loved them and how much they loved us and how they are still with us. If you are watching this and you have been on the same path as me of carrying around this grief and loss and trying to summit this impossible mountain, my heart is with you, and I feel for you, and I'm sorry. But just remember that anytime you feel something, if it's sadness, if it's joy, it could be anything in the world that's tied to that person. It's not a bad thing. Embrace it. Grief, in a strange way, is something special because it reminds you of just how amazing a person was and just how much a person has touched your life, and it allows you to be reminded of them and to keep them with you at all times. We can't be sad forever. Eventually we have to let happiness back in, because that's what the people that we've lost, that's what they would want. It's a scary thing, especially if you've lost a lot of people or you've lost someone who's really close to you, because it can close you off. It can make you never want to open your heart again. It's easier to just lock yourself in a dark room and, blow off hanging out with friends and blow off, relationships and stuff, because if you can just keep yourself closed off, you don't have to worry about possibly losing any of those people. You don't have to worry about feeling this again. But loss is unfortunately a part of life, and the grief that comes along with it, we just have to realize that it's there to remind us of everyone that we've loved, and we should use that as a motivating factor for opening our hearts and loving as hard as we absolutely can and making as many relationships as we can. Because is it possible that we'll lose people that we care about? Yeah, it happens. And I quit trying to make sense or come up with a rhyme or reason of why we lose certain people who are just, amazing. But that is a mental battle that you won't win, and there's no answer. It would be a disservice to them and myself to close myself off and not accept love and not give love and not make these new relationships just out of fear of possibly losing them, because, man, at the end of the day, they're always going to be there. I hope this reaches someone who needs to hear it. And if you have lost someone and you are grieving and you are carrying around that pain, I feel for you. I see you. Every emotion that you feel is absolutely valid. But just remember, that mountain, you're never going to get to the top of it. And the quicker that you can look around and just see the beauty of where you are and just appreciate every emotion, because it came from those people and the realization that those emotions keep them with us at all times, the quicker you will be able to begin to heal. And we'll never be fully healed. The scars that are left on us from the people that we've lost, they're never going to go away, but all scars fade. And it's the same way with dealing with grief. But I want to thank you guys so much for checking out this video. For those who are returning, thanks for coming back to the channel. And for those that are finding the channel for the first time, thank you so much for watching as well. I hope that these words reach the person who needs to hear them. So if you're grieving and working through loss and you want to talk about it, feel free to leave a comment down below. Or if you just want to add a message for someone else or anything you want to do, you can just drop that in the comments down below. I'm Morgan. Love you guys so much. I will see you on the next one. I'm out of here. Later.